Have you ever wondered whether Africa's technological future will be built only inside billion-dollar factories, or whether it could begin in a small neighborhood workshop where creativity matters more than expensive machinery? For decades, many people have looked at Africa mainly as a supplier of raw materials or a market for imported products. Yet, a growing number of Africans are asking a different question. What if the continent's greatest strength is not hidden beneath the ground, but inside the minds of its engineers, mechanics, researchers, and young innovators? That question is becoming increasingly relevant in Burkina Faso, where discussions about economic independence, local manufacturing, and technological innovation are gaining momentum. Rather than waiting for solutions to arrive from abroad, many citizens believe that long-term development will depend on creating technologies designed for African realities. Affordable transportation, practical engineering, accessible maintenance, and efficient use of available resources are becoming just as important as advanced inventions. One story has attracted particular attention. A young electrical engineer looked at an old Peugeot P50 moped that many people considered nothing more than scrap metal. Instead of seeing a machine at the end of its life, he saw an opportunity by replacing its gasoline engine with an electric propulsion system. He transformed a forgotten vehicle into something that represents a much larger idea. The project is not simply about converting motorcycles. It is about asking whether innovation can emerge from local knowledge instead of expensive imports. For many observers, this story reflects a broader conversation taking place across Burkina Faso. As the country places greater emphasis on developing local expertise, technical education, and domestic production, more young engineers are beginning to explore solutions tailored to their own communities. Some supporters also believe that recent national discussions about self-reliance, investment in human capital, and technological development have encouraged a new generation to think more boldly about what they can build at home. While the success of each individual project ultimately depends on engineering, financing, safety standards, and market demand, these initiatives are increasingly viewed as examples of local creativity responding to local challenges. Today, we are not simply examining an electric motorcycle. We are exploring a much bigger question. Can a modest mechanical workshop become the starting point for a new technological ambition? Can practical innovation reshape the future of manufacturing in Burkina Faso? And what lessons might this story offer, not only for Burkina Faso, but for the wider African continent? Stay with us until the end, subscribe to the channel, and together we will examine why this remarkable project has sparked conversations that extend far beyond one converted motorcycle. The remarkable transformation of the old P50 did not happen overnight. Behind this project is the story of Hamidou Kaboré, an electrical engineer who spent years working with electrical systems, mechanical repairs, and renewable energy before deciding to tackle a problem that many people simply accepted as inevitable. Across Burkina Faso, thousands of aging mopeds had gradually disappeared from the roads. Many had been abandoned because replacement parts became increasingly difficult to find, while the rising cost of gasoline made operating them less practical for ordinary families. To most people, these motorcycles had reached the end of their useful lives. To Kabore, however, they represented something entirely different. He believed they still possessed value if someone was willing to rethink their purpose. This difference in perspective is often where innovation begins. While some entrepreneurs search for entirely new products, Kabore chose to improve something that already existed. Instead of importing expensive electric motorcycles that remain out of reach for many households, he focused on converting familiar vehicles into affordable electric transportation. The original frame, wheels, and much of the structure remained intact, while the gasoline engine was replaced with an electric motor and battery system designed to meet local needs. Rather than creating technology that depended on perfect roads or sophisticated infrastructure, the project was developed with Burkina Faso's actual conditions in mind. The motorcycles were designed to withstand rough roads, carry heavy loads, and remain practical for everyday users. This approach reflects an important principle that has shaped technological development in many parts of the world. Innovation is rarely about creating the most complex solution. More often, it is about solving the right problem. In Burkina Faso, the challenge was not to compete with luxury electric vehicle manufacturers. The challenge was to reduce transportation costs, extend the useful life of existing machines, and give ordinary citizens an affordable alternative to increasingly expensive fuel. According to the project's developers, a fully charged battery can provide approximately 60 kilometers of travel while consuming electricity that costs only about 200 CFA francs. Although these figures come from the developers themselves and should continue to be evaluated under different operating conditions, they illustrate the economic motivation behind the project. Beyond the technical achievement lies an even more significant economic idea. Every converted motorcycle represents more than a vehicle returning to the road. It demonstrates how value can be created from resources that already exist within the country. Instead of importing an entirely new product, local engineers apply their skills to improve an existing one. This process creates opportunities for electricians, mechanics, welders, battery technicians, and apprentices who gain practical experience while contributing to local production. A single converted motorcycle may appear modest, but multiplied across hundreds or even thousands of vehicles, the concept begins to suggest something much larger. The possibility of building an ecosystem where engineering knowledge, local manufacturing, and practical innovation reinforce one another. Rather than exporting opportunities, Burkina Faso has a chance to transform local talent into long-term economic value. One converted motorcycle may seem like a small achievement, but history repeatedly shows that major industrial transformations often begin with simple solutions to local problems. Before countries became leaders in automobiles, electronics, or renewable energy, many of their industries started with modest workshops where engineers learned by repairing, adapting, and improving existing machines. Burkina Faso may not yet possess a large electric vehicle industry, but projects like this demonstrate something equally important. They show that the country already possesses one of the essential ingredients for future industrial growth: people capable of solving problems through practical engineering. Economic development is rarely built on imported products alone. The greatest value usually comes from mastering knowledge, improving production methods, and gradually expanding domestic capabilities. Every motorcycle converted inside a local workshop represents far more than an affordable means of transportation. It creates opportunities for technicians to refine their skills, for apprentices to gain hands-on experience, and for small businesses to become part of an emerging supply chain. As more engineers learn how to design electrical systems, improve battery integration, and maintain electric drivetrains, the country slowly builds technical knowledge that cannot simply be purchased from abroad. This idea reflects what economists often describe as the development of an industrial ecosystem. Instead of depending entirely on imported finished products, local businesses begin participating in different stages of production. Some specialize in electrical installation, others focus on metal fabrication, battery maintenance, software diagnostics, or mechanical assembly. Universities and technical schools can provide research, while private workshops transform academic knowledge into practical solutions. Over time, these connections create an environment where innovation becomes a continuous process rather than an isolated success story. Many successful manufacturing nations followed a similar path. They did not immediately begin by producing world-famous products. They first mastered repairs, modifications, component manufacturing, and quality improvement before gradually moving toward original designs. For Burkina Faso, converting existing motorcycles into electric vehicles may represent one practical step along that same journey. It allows local engineers to understand electrical propulsion systems while working with equipment already familiar to consumers. Every completed project becomes another opportunity to improve efficiency, reduce costs, and strengthen technical confidence. However, optimism should always be balanced with realism. A promising prototype does not automatically create a sustainable industry. Expanding production requires reliable financing, access to quality components, standardized manufacturing procedures, professional safety testing, and consistent after-sales service. Battery performance must be carefully monitored under different operating conditions. Replacement parts must remain available, and customers must have confidence that repairs can be completed quickly when problems occur. Without these foundations, even the most creative invention can struggle to move beyond a small workshop. This is precisely why many development experts emphasize that innovation should never rely solely on individual talent. Individual inventors inspire change, but long-term industrial success depends on institutions. Technical schools must educate skilled engineers. Research centers must continue improving designs. Financial institutions need mechanisms that allow promising entrepreneurs to expand responsibly. Governments can contribute by supporting vocational training, encouraging research partnerships, and establishing safety standards that protect consumers while promoting innovation. When these elements work together, isolated inventions become part of a much larger economic transformation. Burkina Faso's long-term technological ambitions cannot depend solely on creative engineers working in isolated workshops. Every successful industrial nation eventually reached a point where education, research, private enterprise, and public policy began reinforcing one another. That broader perspective helps explain why the story of one converted motorcycle has generated discussions far beyond the transportation sector. It has encouraged people to ask a more fundamental question. What kind of ecosystem is required for local innovation to become a sustainable driver of national development? Education is one of the first pieces of that puzzle. Engineers are not created overnight, nor are they produced by talent alone. They require technical schools, experienced instructors, modern equipment, and opportunities to apply classroom knowledge to real-world problems. Hamidou Kaboré's journey demonstrates the importance of practical experience. His ability to convert gasoline-powered motorcycles into electric vehicles was built upon years of working with electrical systems and mechanical equipment. His story illustrates how technical education becomes significantly more valuable when it is connected directly to local industry, rather than remaining confined to academic theory. Equally important is the relationship between research and entrepreneurship. In many developing economies, researchers often produce promising ideas that never reach the marketplace because businesses lack the resources to commercialize them. At the same time, entrepreneurs frequently encounter practical challenges that universities could help solve through applied research. When these two communities work together, innovation becomes more efficient. Workshops provide practical testing environments, while educational institutions contribute scientific knowledge and technical improvements. Over time, this collaboration creates a cycle in which each successful project generates new experience, better designs, and additional opportunities for future innovation. Recent discussions within Burkina Faso have increasingly emphasized the importance of strengthening domestic capabilities instead of relying exclusively on imported technologies. Within this broader national conversation, President Ibrahim Traore has repeatedly highlighted the value of scientific research, technical education, industrial development, and investment in human capital. His public speeches have consistently encouraged greater confidence in local expertise and have called for stronger support for researchers, engineers, and innovators who can contribute to the country's development. These statements establish a general policy direction, although there is no evidence that he directly initiated or supervised the P50 conversion project itself. This distinction is important because technological progress rarely depends on one individual alone. Political leaders can establish priorities, encourage investment, and promote education, but engineers, entrepreneurs, researchers, investors, and consumers ultimately determine whether innovative ideas succeed in the marketplace. Many observers therefore view projects like Hamidou Kaboré's as examples of how public discussions about self-reliance can intersect with private initiative. Rather than presenting government policy and individual innovation as competing forces, the story demonstrates how they can complement each other when both focus on solving practical problems. If Burkina Faso continues strengthening technical education, encouraging applied research, supporting small manufacturers, and connecting innovation with market demand, projects like this electric motorcycle may become more than isolated achievements. They could represent the early foundations of a broader technological ecosystem capable of producing solutions designed by Africans for African realities, while contributing to economic growth that is both sustainable and locally driven. Every promising innovation eventually reaches a moment when enthusiasm alone is no longer enough. The electric P50 project in Burkina Faso has demonstrated creativity, technical skill, and an ability to solve real problems facing ordinary citizens. Yet transforming an inspiring prototype into a sustainable industry requires overcoming challenges that every emerging technology must eventually face. These challenges should not be viewed as signs of failure. Instead, they represent the natural next stage in the evolution of any serious engineering project. The first challenge is scale. Converting a limited number of motorcycles inside a small workshop is very different from producing hundreds or even thousands of reliable vehicles every year. Larger production requires specialized equipment, standardized manufacturing procedures, trained technicians, dependable suppliers, and efficient quality control. Every motorcycle must perform consistently regardless of who assembled it. Customers expect the same level of reliability from every product, and that expectation can only be achieved through carefully organized production systems rather than individual craftsmanship alone. Another important issue involves battery technology and long-term maintenance. Electric motorcycles depend heavily on the durability and performance of their battery systems. Questions naturally arise regarding battery lifespan, replacement costs, charging efficiency, and operation under Burkina Faso's climate conditions. These are not criticisms of the project, but practical engineering questions that every electric vehicle manufacturer must answer. Independent testing, transparent performance data, and certified safety standards will strengthen public confidence and help ensure that customers fully understand both the advantages and the limitations of the technology. Electric transportation also depends upon reliable access to electricity. As more vehicles become electrified, demand for charging infrastructure will inevitably increase. This creates opportunities as well as responsibilities. Investments in renewable energy, particularly solar power, battery storage, and distributed charging stations, could complement future electric mobility initiatives. Rather than viewing transportation and energy as separate sectors, policymakers may increasingly consider them parts of the same long-term development strategy. At the same time, Burkina Faso's technological ambitions exist within a broader international environment. Some international organizations and foreign partners have expressed concerns regarding political stability, governance, investment conditions, and human rights within the country. These concerns are genuine subjects of international discussion and should not be dismissed. However, it is equally important not to confuse debates about political governance with the abilities of local engineers and innovators. The technical value of Hamidou Kaboré's work should be evaluated according to engineering quality, safety, affordability, and its capacity to solve practical transportation problems rather than through unrelated political disagreements. Looking ahead, the most constructive path forward may be one built on cooperation rather than confrontation. Burkina Faso can continue strengthening its own scientific capabilities while also learning from international experience, adopting recognized engineering standards, and expanding partnerships that encourage technology transfer instead of long-term dependence. True technological independence does not mean isolation. It means developing the confidence, skills, and institutions necessary to become an equal participant in global innovation while continuing to create solutions that respond first and foremost to the realities of local communities. The story of one converted motorcycle ultimately leads to a much larger question. What kind of future does Africa want to build for itself? The answer will not be determined by a single invention, one workshop, or one engineer. It will depend on whether countries across the continent can create the conditions that allow thousands of innovators to transform practical ideas into lasting industries. Burkina Faso's electric P50 project reminds us that technological progress does not always begin with massive factories or unlimited financial resources. Sometimes it begins with one person who refuses to accept that an old machine has reached the end of its usefulness. The broader significance of this initiative extends far beyond transportation. It demonstrates that innovation can emerge from local experience, respond to local needs, and create opportunities for local communities. At the same time, it also highlights the importance of maintaining realistic expectations. Sustainable industrial development requires education, research, financing, infrastructure, quality standards, and consistent public confidence. Without these foundations, even the most creative engineering projects may struggle to achieve widespread impact. Within this broader context, many supporters view the leadership of Ibrahim Traore as part of an ongoing national conversation about strengthening domestic capabilities, investing in human capital, and encouraging technological self-reliance. Others continue to raise questions regarding governance, political stability, and the country's international relationships. Both perspectives are part of today's reality. The future of Burkina Faso will ultimately depend not on slogans or political debates alone, but on measurable progress in education, innovation, economic opportunity, and institutional development. For the wider African continent, the lessons are equally valuable. Countries such as Mali and Niger, along with many of their neighbors, face similar challenges involving energy costs, youth employment, industrial development, and technological dependence. Every successful local innovation demonstrates that practical solutions can emerge from within African societies themselves. Yet every successful innovation also reminds us that cooperation, rigorous engineering standards, international partnerships, and long-term investment remain essential if those ideas are to grow beyond individual success stories. Perhaps that is why this converted motorcycle has attracted so much attention. It represents more than an electric vehicle. It symbolizes a way of thinking that values creativity over limitation, adaptation over resignation, and problem-solving over dependency. Whether this project eventually evolves into a larger industry remains uncertain, but it has already achieved something important. It has encouraged people to imagine a different future, one in which African engineers increasingly design, build, improve, and manufacture technologies that address African realities. As African news continues to follow developments across the African Union, stories like this from Burkina Faso remind us that innovation is becoming an increasingly important part of conversations taking place across West Africa and the Sahel. Alongside the leadership discussions surrounding Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Chiani, as well as evolving relationships with France, Mali, and Niger, technological development has become another area shaping the region's future. The question that remains is not whether Africa possesses talented innovators. The evidence already suggests that it does. The real question is whether governments, businesses, educational institutions, and citizens will work together to transform these individual achievements into lasting engines of economic growth. If you enjoyed this analysis, subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and join us for our next discussion as we continue exploring the ideas shaping Africa's future. As this journey comes to an end, the story of a converted P50 motorcycle leaves us with a far more profound message than the success of a single engineering project. It reminds us that the future of a nation is rarely shaped by one dramatic breakthrough. More often, it is built through countless practical solutions created by ordinary people who refuse to accept that today's limitations must define tomorrow's possibilities. The workshop, established by Hamidou Kaboré, represents more than mechanical ingenuity. It represents the belief that knowledge, determination, and local experience can become valuable national resources. For Burkina Faso, the true significance of this project lies not only in producing an affordable electric motorcycle, but in demonstrating a different approach to development. Instead of asking what technologies must be imported, the country is increasingly asking what technologies can be designed, adapted, and improved by its own engineers. This shift in thinking may ultimately prove more valuable than any individual invention because it encourages continuous learning, experimentation, and confidence in domestic capabilities. At the same time, success will require patience and discipline. Every promising innovation must eventually pass through rigorous testing, meet recognized safety standards, attract responsible investment, and earn the trust of consumers. Research institutions, technical schools, private businesses, financial organizations, and public authorities all have important roles to play. Only when these elements work together can individual creativity evolve into a sustainable industrial sector capable of creating employment, strengthening the economy, and improving everyday life. The experience of Burkina Faso also offers meaningful lessons for many other African nations. Countries facing similar economic and technological challenges do not necessarily need to begin with the largest factories or the most expensive equipment. They can begin by identifying local problems, developing practical engineering solutions, investing in technical education, and gradually building industries that reflect their own realities. Progress is rarely immediate, but each successful innovation contributes another piece to a stronger foundation. As we continue following developments across African news and discussions taking place within the African Union, the experiences of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and the wider West Africa region will remain important examples of how technology, education, and local entrepreneurship can influence the future of the Sahel. Leaders such as Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Chiani continue to shape important national conversations, while relationships with France and other international partners remain part of a broader regional dialogue. Regardless of different political opinions, one principle remains constant. Lasting development will depend on the ability of African societies to educate skilled people, encourage innovation, strengthen institutions, and transform ideas into sustainable industries. Perhaps that is the most important lesson this humble motorcycle can teach us. Real progress is not measured only by the machines a nation imports. It is measured by the confidence its people have in designing, improving, and building solutions for themselves. If Burkina Faso continues investing in knowledge, engineering, and practical innovation, this small workshop may one day be remembered not simply as the place where an old motorcycle became electric, but as one of many places where a new chapter of African technological ambition quietly began. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, please subscribe to the channel, share this video with others who are interested in Africa's future, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective is an important part of this conversation, and we look forward to exploring more stories that highlight innovation, resilience, and opportunity across the African continent. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. Every video on this channel is carefully researched, thoughtfully written, and meticulously edited by our dedicated team. We don't rely on automated production or shortcuts to create our content. Every story, every visual, and every detail is crafted with genuine care, passion, and a commitment to bringing you meaningful, high quality videos.